My name is Amri Widodo from ANU, and I'm chairing this special session which talks about human. And we have 3 speakers here. The first one is very special because this is the first Austrian scholars who speak in Indonesian update. And I mean here Austrian, not Australian. And he is not Conan the Barbarian, but Martin Slama, the learned scholars. He is based in the Austrian Academy of Science, and he has been conducting research on the relationship of media and Islam. This is the 3 topic which is covered by this session, which is about religion, knowledge, and art. The second speaker is Kathleen Azali from Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, Yusof Ishak Institute. It doesn't have anything to do with Yusof Ishak from Hastamitra. Totally different. She is going to present her research on libraries in Indonesia. She has been well published. And the third one, last but not least, is Edwin Jurriens, originally from the Netherlands, moved to Canberra, and now is based on the Melbourne University. His research has been on radio, media, and currently on art and media technology. So let's start with Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Amri. It may well be that I'm the first Austrian presenting at the Indonesia update, so you're witnessing a historic moment. And I'm grateful to Ross and Edwin for having invited me and for allowing this historic moment to become reality. This presentation is based on the research project Islamic Interfaces of the Internet, Emerging Socialities and Forms of Piety in Indonesia. It is funded by the Austrian Science Fund, and I have the pleasure to head a research team which consists of Fatima Hussein from the State Islamic University Sunan Kalijaga in Yogyakarta, Eva Nisa, who has obtained her PhD in anthropology from ANU and who is now a lecturer at Victoria University in Wellington, as well as Diana Barvanova and Johan Heiss, colleagues of mine from the Institute for Social Anthropology at the Austrian Academy of Sciences. In the following, I will show you some pictures, after which I will discuss our topic in more detail. Let me start with the obvious, namely that smartphones and social media are immensely popular in Indonesia. Smartphone users can be observed almost everywhere and in various situations, such as during prayer meetings, when watching TV, that is, when actually not watching TV, or during lunch and dinner. Look at this wonderful symbiosis between the headscarf and the mobile phone. Given the omnipresence of communication devices in Indonesia today, as a researcher, one is certainly not only the observer, but also the observed. Thanks to a recent invention, the chance that one becomes a photo subject when conducting research has even increased. I'm referring here to a device which allows taking pictures of oneself or of oneself together with others. I'm talking about the selfie stick, which is called, as most of you will know, tongsis in Indonesia. Literally the narcissistic stick. Pardon? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Is it better now, like this? Yeah, closer. Okay. Okay. In light of these recent developments, it does not come as a surprise that in the field of religion, we find a creative variety of employing these internet-connected gadgets as well. A range of applications are available now that not only comprise a digital Quran or Digi-Quran, but also other religious texts such as treatises on fiqh, on Islamic law, and tafsir, the interpretation of the Quran. Moreover, and this is my favorite application, one can even use one's smartphone for performing zikr, the Islamic rosary, where the prayer beads are replaced with a particular smartphone app. And one can certainly use the tongsis to document one's religious practice, such as participating in the Sholat Eid at the end of Ramadan, as this picture from Indonesia's news magazine Tempo nicely demonstrates. As these examples indicate, practice in Islam in Indonesia has at least partly gone digital due to the uses of communication devices and social media. Social media provide ample opportunities to exhibit visual and textual material, including people's expressions of piety, as well as to explore new forms of sociality. In the Indonesian context in particular, social networking interfaces have become sites where the country's many Islamic faces are displayed. And it is these emerging forms of conveying and expressing Islam, as well as the socialities and assertions of authority that are generated in these intersecting online-offline realms that I'm studying. In Indonesia, the rise of new communication technologies coincided with the emergence and spread of forms of collective piety, such as Islamic study gatherings and prayer sessions, so-called Majlis Taklim. Given the prayer meeting's popularity, a new market has opened up for preachers called Ustad, in the case of male preachers, and Ustaza in being the honorific form of address for female preachers. They deliver their services to Indonesians of all social backgrounds, from upper to lower class Muslims. These Islamic study gatherings and prayer meetings can be based on a variety of social formations that can considerably differ in size. Mostly lower class Indonesians meet in mosques or follow the most prominent preachers to wherever they hold their mass gatherings. Being able to afford the engagement of a preacher for the more private gatherings, middle and upper class Indonesians prefer smaller praying sessions involving family members, neighbors, friends, and colleagues. And such gatherings are mainly held in homes or in office buildings, as well as in campus mosques or in the mosques of middle class neighborhoods. The prayer meeting as a significant form of offline Islamic religiosity in Indonesia is of particular importance for our topic, because their participants, as well as the preachers, are increasingly going online. In middle and upper class circles in particular, the members of these groups are often connected via Facebook, WhatsApp, Line, Telegram, BlackBerry Messenger, etc. Most of these interfaces allow forming groups in which the Islamic preachers are also involved. This means that the group members can easily consult their preacher, raising issues from Islamic jurisprudence to personal problems, some of which can be further discussed in the group. So these particular online mediations, the Islamic prayer group, which for example meets only once a week offline, becomes part of everyday life, as does the preacher, to whom messages can be sent anytime. My research also shows that if a preacher does not own a smartphone or a similar device, it is simply given to him by his middle or upper class followers. This happened to Ustad Hassan, a teacher of Islamic religion in a high school in South Jakarta who runs several Majlis Taklim, and was given an iPad by his followers. He also works as a private religious teacher and became popular among Jakarta's celebrities. The picture he presented to me on his iPad depicts him together with Indonesian pop star Maya Estianty. In our conversation, he distinguished the social background of his followers. He particularly emphasized that middle to upper class Muslims like to involve him in discussions online, and that they can be critical of what he says. The communication channels on BlackBerry Messenger and WhatsApp are also used by his followers to engage in private conversations with Ustad Hassan. He explained that his followers ask for his advice concerning family problems, masalah keluarga, such as affairs, divorce, etc. In such cases, communication relies on and sometimes challenges the authority of the Ustad at the same time. For example, Ustad Kudus, another Ustad who lives in Yogyakarta, told me that women like to ask him for his advice concerning their unfaithful husbands and related problems. The Ustad likes to reply to the women that they should be patient, sabar, but sometimes, he told me, there are women, when I tell them that they should be patient, they answer back, well, I don't have another advice than just being patient. Yeah. Ada nggak nasihat lain selain sabar, kan? Such ethnographic examples lead us to investigate the construction of Islamic authority in interrelated online-offline realms. In pursuing this, my research goes beyond studies that first of all saw the internet as a sphere where the authority of established Islamic scholars is undermined. For instance, John Anderson, based on his study of Islamic websites, asserted that the internet became, I quote, an arena for alternative expressions of Islam, both to popular and to traditional elite views. Yet what we can observe in Indonesia today is a novel constellation of interfaces. That is an online-offline mix of relationships facilitated by social media, which provides opportunities for both the assertion of authority and its questioning by a variety of actors using new communication channels. It seems that authority is more frequently constructed dialogically now, and that especially women take the opportunity to talk back. Given the plurality of social media interfaces, Islamic sociality, assertions of authority and expressions of piety are manifold in Indonesia as well. One can find preachers not only on Facebook and WhatsApp, but also on Twitter. To spread one's teachings on Twitter is called Kultweet in Indonesia, as many of you will know, an acronym for Kuliah Twitter, literally Twitter lessons. Like this preacher here, explaining a hadith, a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, who has more than 1,900 followers. Using WhatsApp, Telegram, and other messaging apps, a particularly popular practice is reading the Quran collectively. The biggest group engaged in this practice is called Odoj, standing for One Day, One Juice, with more than 100,000 active members. They run a website and Twitter account. Odoj divides its members into groups of 30 people, with every member of a group being obliged to read one section of the Quran, one juz, every day, so that together they read the whole Quran every day. They do this for 30 days, meaning that they not only collectively read the whole Quran 30 times, but also that every member has personally completed the Quran in 1 month. Odoj is based in Jakarta and opened branches in many parts of Indonesia. It has evolved into an Indonesian-wide movement. Yet reading the Quran collectively, with the help of social media, is also practiced under the guidance of Islamic preachers on a more local level. For example, a preacher together with his close followers and friends can run several Quran reading groups. Every day he then distributes the chapters that his followers have to read, as this slide shows. In addition to distributing the chapters of the Quran that have to be read, a great deal of communication in the WhatsApp groups that are run by the preachers concerns the rules on which the groups are based. And the central rule is that one must report every day, whether one has actually read one's chapter of the Quran or not. The members of the groups report to their respective group coordinators, usually close associates of the Ustad. And the coordinators run their own WhatsApp group where they report to the preacher. The following example is a conversation between Ustad Nabil, an Ustad based in Jakarta, who runs 9 Quran reading groups, and one of his group coordinators, whose name is Fatima. Fatima says, Ustad, in group number 6, in her group, only Ali Anishadi has not yet reported. But his track record, English and original, is good. Can I tolerate this? Ustad Nabil replies, it is a violation, because he often forgets to report. Fatima again, but Ustad, as long as I manage group number 6, he always reported. But okay, I just follow what you say. And Ustad Nabil again, according to my records, he has violated the rules already 2 times. So this was the 3rd time, and according to the rules introduced by Ustad Nabil, this means that Ali Anis Hadi is out. He has to leave the group, as Fatima did not succeed in changing Ustad Hadi's mind. He is, however, expected to continue reading the Quran every day, but on his own. Only in the next month he is allowed to join the group again, when a new round begins. In the meantime, he loses the sociality of the group, and he does so because of his lack of discipline. This brings us to another important aspect of this new phenomenon of online Quran reading groups in Indonesia: discipline and punishment. The aforementioned biggest Indonesian Quran reading movement, Odoj, is particularly concerned that its members can manage to read one section of the Quran every day. On the Twitter account, they publish advice how to become a successful Quran reader despite numerous other daily obligations. I want to show you a particularly elaborate version of such advice. The tweet has the title, the other solution to be disciplined about organizing time. So that would be my translation of solusi odoj agar disiplin untuk mengatur waktu. How one successfully can manage one's time is explained by way of these charts that divide the day according to the 5 Islamic prayer times and according to the 3 zones that indicate the busyness of odoj members, ranging from busy in red color to medium in orange to relaxed, santai, in green. It is suggested that one should change the habit to be busy reading one section of the Quran between the afternoon prayer, Asar, and the last prayer of the day, Isha, as represented by the left circle from your perspective. Instead, to avoid finishing one's chapter late or not at all, one should be busy reading one's chapter the night before, after the morning prayer, Subuh, until noon, Lohor, as shown on the right side. The rest of the day should then be relaxed for the Quran reader, and the group coordinator is not stressed out in the evening, when at the last moment all the reports come in, or some group members have to be contacted individually whether they have finished their chapter or not. Having introduced how various messaging apps and Twitter are popularly used for practicing Islam, let me now turn to my last ethnographic example, which is focused on Facebook. That is particularly textual and visual Facebook status updates. With regard to the latter, Indonesian Muslims, that is not only preachers with a certain following, but quite ordinary Muslims, engage on Facebook in what they call dakwah, proselytization. Mrs. Ratnasari, who lectures computer science at the university in Central Java, explained to me, on Facebook, everything that delivers Islamic content can be termed dakwah. And everybody can use Facebook, including myself, when, for example, I communicate with people who go on the pilgrimage. When 6 family members of mine went on the pilgrimage, we asked them for pictures. As a result, the family members here in Indonesia could see their activities there. This is one way of using Facebook for dakwah. And she gave me another example. Everybody likes soap operas, but there are soap operas, although they have an Islamic title, their content is often negative. For example, the wife is angry with her husband and demands a divorce. Are there not many cases of divorce these days? In the soap operas, people see this. So I tell the people that watching soap operas is not good. In my Facebook status, I wrote that soap operas exhaust your emotions, they give you a headache. In Indonesia, besides messaging apps, particularly Facebook became a major site where Muslims deliver insight into their Islamic practices and discourses. The rather moralist and demanding tone in spreading the word of Islam of the example above often goes hand in hand with more spiritual expressions of religiosity. In their Facebook accounts, appearing pious, ranging from posting Quranic verses and short references to God in status updates, to entries with religious content and pictures of Islamic practice. So appearing pious represents a major cultural genre of content, a phrase I borrow from Daniel Miller that is characteristic for Indonesian online activities. Researching social media and Islamic practice in Indonesia first of all means to acknowledge, and I'm already concluding here, that one can find Islamic expressions and practices of Indonesian Muslims virtually everywhere online. On Facebook, Twitter, BlackBerry Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram, etc., etc. And the connections of these online activities with offline life vary also greatly, ranging from Majlis Taklim prayer groups that collectively go online via WhatsApp or Telegram, to Quran reading groups whose members can be spread all over Indonesia and beyond. What we encounter here are not only new expressions of personal piety, but also new social formations and forms of sociality. From this follows the question how authority is constructed in these interconnected online-offline realms. As my research and those of my colleagues suggest, Islamic authorities today have to be able not only to preach, but also to engage in dialogues with their followers. And it are often women that use social media to ask questions and to question what has been said. If the preachers want to be successful, they not only have to be present online, but also have to be able to respond to their followers' concerns properly online. Islamic authority is thus constructed more dialogic than in the pre-digital era, and women, especially Indonesian middle-class women, who represent the main interlocutors and can influence the career of an ustad to a considerable extent. Moreover, on Facebook, for example, proselytization is clearly not the business of established Islamic scholars or professional preachers alone. Proselytization or da'wah has become an everyday activity of ordinary Muslims, as status updates on Facebook have become updates of Islamic piousness that are meant as a reminder for friends and family members with whom one is connected. As proselytization is not restricted to verbal expressions, posting pictures as a popular practice for documenting one's Islamic mobility within and outside Indonesia is also part of these proselytization efforts. Pilgrimage has gone online and would be incomplete if it would be restricted to a mere offline affair. Also for theological reasons, posting pictures of the Hajj or of the Umrah is seen as part of one's proselytization efforts. Yet the Islamic middle-class lifestyle that we can observe today is not just about consumption and sociality or the fulfillment of spiritual desires, but also about disciplining practices. And this is an aspect that became clear to me only during my research in Indonesia. In the project proposal, I did not refer to Foucault, etc. So I did not refer to discipline and punishment. Yet I find this aspect important because it gives evidence of how deeply social media have already penetrated the everyday life of Indonesian Muslims. People have to reorganize their day to be able to prove their piousness to their fellow Muslims online. If they are not self-disciplined, this has consequences not only for their spiritual but also for their social life, as they risk being expelled from the online group. One might argue that self-discipline is an important aspect of Islam from the religion's very beginning. Yet with the introduction of social media, this aspect has entered new terrain, where not only Sufi mystics or exemplary pious Muslims engage in self-disciplining practices, but where Quran reading groups have become a mass phenomenon and are as such part of an Islamic middle-class lifestyle. That Indonesian Muslims proudly present their pilgrimage tour pictures on Facebook and at the same time join Odoj as stern Quran reciters shows how closely consumption, piety and self-discipline are connected. As such, they inform the social formations and power relations of Indonesia's Islamic field today, which seems to be driven by the dynamics, tensions and contradictions these online-offline religiosities generate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's 1 minute short. The next one is Kathleen Azali.
Okay. I'm presenting on digitalization in libraries, archives, and knowledge education. But before I start, I'd like to let you know that I don't have any formal training in libraries or archiving, which in itself actually requires very specific technical skills. So this is just more of an overview of what is happening in Indonesia. First of all, I want to begin by asking, anyone want to take a guess how many libraries exist in Indonesia? Anyone? 1,000? Come on. Anyone? Okay, I don't know either. So these are the numbers that I got. You can see the numbers here, 25 in 2015, and then by 2016 it has boom gone up to this level. And in a public statement done by Perpusnas, they stated to this number. So yeah, but you can see that the high numbers usually come from the school libraries, right? And the higher education libraries, the public libraries, tend to be a bit more constant, special libraries as well. But what has remained constant since 2012 are the number of certified libraries, only 3,500. So you can imagine how 3,500 split themselves to be librarians for 25,728 libraries, right? So in short, we have very short number of people working in libraries. These are the number of certified librarians. It is not surprising, of course, that the numbers differ. But yeah, those are the patterns that we can discern. But so why this such a high uncertainties? It's not surprising considering the lack of clarity what constitutes a library in school. It's quite common for us to go to school and find that the library actually is just a shelf of library. I'll show you next one. This is the mapping project of libraries done by the National Library. You can go to the address to check the mapping. But even this number shows, again, different numbers from the previous statistics. So again, very divergent statistics. And if you look closely, the statistics also, the mapping will show sometimes school library are actually kecamatan library, and all mixed up. So of course the issue is data collection is very difficult in Indonesia, and you will notice that again high concentration in Java, very few concentration, mirroring a bit like what Pak Ono has shown. So yeah, and very few in Papua, of course. So despite frequent rhetorics lambasting Indonesians for our supposedly lack of reading interest, minat baca, or lack of budaya arsip, archiving culture, and the need to mencerdaskan bangsa, so making the nation smart, particularly for our low PISA scores, libraries and archives in Indonesia suffer from the persistent deep-seated problems. Poorly staffed in terms of quantity and professional knowledge or skills, very limited library information schools. We only have one professor in library information for Indonesia, so no other professor, and very fragmented and under-resourced this education. Grave lack resources of funds, low self-esteem, and poor public image. Because the profession is usually considered merely as administrative or clerical work, or even worse, where corrupt, incompetent staffs or civil servants are punished as outcasts. This, I think, in 2012, one of the corrupt officers were actually put in charge of the library in Jakarta, causing a lot of protests. And yeah, poor remuneration, salary levels, career paths. So basically the same problems that are plaguing bureaucracy. Also the issue is, of course, the working hours. Library working hours are, opening hours are based on the civil servants' working hours, which is 8:30 to 5. So the library has to close after 5 and rarely open during weekends. So that brings a very different dimension to the libraries in Australia or outside of Indonesia and southern countries. Okay. The history of library and archive, like many places around the world, is of course related to the practical day-to-day and related to the history of the nation itself. The resources in Perpustakaan Nasional was only inaugurated in 1980, but its precursor dated back to the colonial period, the Library of the National Museum, which originated in the Batavian Society of Arts and Sciences. The Arsip Nasional, meanwhile, originated in Lands Archive, established by Dutch colonial government in 1892, a decade earlier than the establishment of the National Archive in Netherlands, which was itself influenced by the change in government systems from monarchy to parliamentary systems. So these are the colonial dimension that I want to bring about, because there's the issue, of course, of the how archive is sequestered by basic change in language and government systems. And we in Indonesia are very familiar with how archives get leaked in bundles, peddled out in flea markets, or used to light up stoves, or used as bungkus kacang, of course. Bungkus kacang is to wrap peanuts. So the colonial government history, and of course the context of the authoritarian government during the new order that controls the production of knowledge, need to be taken into account. So the outcome of this distrust of state is the growth of quasi-public collection initiated by privates, and the notable examples is, of course, the Pusat Dokumentasi Sastra Habib Yasin, and also Cinematek Indonesia and Perpustakaan Bung Hatta. So you have a very gray area where the private and public funds are not clear, and neither are the regulation or the membership system and the cataloging systems. Typically, these collections were organized with their own filing and classification systems, usually subjectively, even if meticulously developed by the founder, who is normally not trained in library or information systems. So I'll show you this. These are quite common during the 90s or even earlier. These are book rentals, for a lot of them. And then in the 90s, these were incorporated by the government into Taman Bacaan. And you can find in Papua, using Instagram, showing how they are building libraries and incorporating a lot of supplies of books. And this is where while I'm doing my eKTP registration, and you will find Sudut Baca, so reading corner, and yeah. A cabinet there that is doesn't seem to be open, and another one is, of course, the legal dimension. This is very common view in universities, any place near university, the photocopy. So, yeah, again, there are lots of gray areas within the legal constraints that usually define libraries and archives. I'm going to talk next about the recent initiative in building online catalogs. This one is Indonesia One Search, built by Ismail Fahmi, a student of Pak Ono. He built this One Search, basically tried to connect a lot of disjointed archives that have existed. So in the 90s, we have lots of initiatives, very diverse, building their own systems. And so in the end, you end up with lots of disjointed catalogs that do not communicate with each other. And so what this One Search tried to do is build a system that connect different platforms from Koha. So these are the common platforms used in building catalogs in Indonesia. And the attempt is to integrate that into Indonesia One Search. You can look it up in onesearch.id now. And it uses international archiving system. And it's trying to be integrated into government platform as well. So this one is if you are trying to search for health related information, then there will be some filtering to help to make the research more specific. And these are Senayan library management systems. This is an open source library cataloging built by, well, a bunch of guys, built by Department of Education. Actually, the education wing within library and archiving wing within the Department of Education, but it's a bit separate from the previous one. This one is used different system called INLIS, and this one use a different system, but they communicate to each other. One noticeable gap is, of course, the gender gap. So a lot of the users, a lot of the staff, people working in libraries are women, but a lot of the developers are male, and that creates some sort of dependency that both sides are not too happy about, I'm sure. And this is the state of the National Library right now. It's currently under renovation. So it's very different. So you have, on the one hand, very institutionalized, currently under renovation National Library, building lots of digitalization and infrastructure. But this one is taken from the National Archive of the ANRI, and you can see some diorama built inside. So if those familiar with the Indonesian history is of course familiar with the way military history has been dominating Indonesian history. So this was built during the Yudhoyono presidency in 2012. And of course you can find the state version of the history about the 65, for example. So when you are archives, of course, control knowledge, production of knowledge, but at the same time, you also see various initiatives outside of the official categories of libraries, archives, and museums themselves. These are some of the newer gray areas initiatives. This one is Indonesian Visual Art Archive. So it archives more of the visual images, visual art. And this one is called itself Warung Arsip. So it's basically archive peddler. Those that cannot get archives, you can basically purchase from this one. And another one defines itself as Indonesian Street Art Database, and they do the archiving actually through Instagram. More recent initiatives is Irama Nusantara and Lokananta Musik. Lokananta works together with Lokananta Studio based in Solo. Lokananta was built in during Sukarno era to actually work with the radio in creating music and radio content. So it's currently working on the digitalization of it. You can go to the website and check out music from the 50s and the 60s. But again, the issues of, despite all these vibrant initiatives, you can from various citizens and also from the more technologically literate citizens, you can see that the elephant in the room is, of course, the issue of which gets to produce the history. So in early this year, we see lots of hysteria in trying to crack down on communists and PKI, and lots of book burning. That even the acting head acting director of the National Library said that he's supporting the destruction of leftist books. This caused a lot of dissent, but at the same time, it seemed that if the question, of course, if it gets digitalized, if what remains in the gray area gets visible, then what about the legal structure? Because these are the issues. For a long time in Indonesia, archives and libraries tend to be viewed within very apolitical, just mencerdaskan minat bangsa, mencerdaskan minat baca. So it's kind of like very apolitical education view that do not consider this legal issue. So in conclusion, the digitalization in archives and libraries and education, there's this excitement, and with the tools and technological tools getting cheaper, that there's a excitement and a broadening notion about how records could be used, their functions and practices, but at the same time, what we often forget is what they represent, their authenticity, reliability, and authority, because of course, with archives, in terms of legal issues, for example, for surat tanah, digital archiving still are not legally viable. And of course, the usage, storage, classification, and circulation of information through archives and libraries have very significant significant social, legal, political, economic consequences, because they bring visibility and advantages to some points of view and silences another. And we also see redivision across the silos of the LAMs, libraries, archives, and museum. But frequently, what we focus are on the persistent technical problems, the lack of minat baca, low interest in literacy, and the human resources, public perception, integration and interoperability, uneven or lack of resources. But this issue, the history of colonial autocratic regimes enforcing their version of authority, language sequestration, distrust of the state, institutions, and how it has operated, how invisibility and lack of clarity actually exists because it is avoiding state from forcing and taking away, forcing itself to be visible. And of course, the geographic and climate change challenges in record maintenance. So I'd like to end with this slide. First slide is from Pusat Dokumentasi Sastra HB Yassin. In 2000, I think during Jokowi governorship in Jakarta, he gave the largest fund to support HB Yassin, but after he left in the presidency, then the bureaucracy, of course, do not know how to sustain that. And then this one is the saving of archives from Aceh, the Surat Tanah, trying to save the Surat Tanah. And these are the books that are returned after the communist, anti-communist craze. These are books returned into just one publisher, Komunitas Bambu. Thank you.
Next one, Edwin Jurriens from Melbourne Uni.
Okay, thank you, Amre. The revised title of my presentation is Digital Art, Hacktivism and Social Engagement. And I think it relates to some of the things that were mentioned in the previous section. For instance, Yanwa was referring to citizens are innovating. John Postel was also referring to giving voice to the voiceless. And Pa Ono was also mentioning the importance of education and was also referring to hacking. So I will look at some of the same issues, but from an artistic perspective. So a remarkable development in Indonesian art since the early 1990s has been experimentation with unconventional new media such as video, the internet, mobile phones, and even biotechnology. This development is the product of global trends in art and media, the enhanced accessibility of consumer technology in Indonesia, and increased freedom of speech since the fall of Suharto's totalitarian New Order regime. Digitalization here is not merely about new electronic communication strategies and financial transactions surrounding art, but affecting art at the very core of its production, circulation, and appreciation. Thus, contemporary art and the broader creative economy to which it belongs constitutes an important form of expression and area of social life on a par with electronic finance, governance, healthcare, and education services, for analyzing and putting into critical perspective the idea of a digital revolution in Indonesia. I discuss how the contemporary art market, as an essential part of Indonesia's creative economy, has been shifting interest from traditional media such as painting and sculpture to new media such as digital art. Some artists and art collectives have remained under the commercial radar, however, due to the nature of their works, ideas, and interests. They frequently engage in collaborative projects with local communities to creatively and critically address urgent social issues such as healthcare and food security. I argue that their ideas and practices are not the product of a digital revolution only, but build on a longer history of social engagement in Indonesian creative practice. And I specifically focus on the idea of hacking in the context of Indonesian digital art. Hacking in these instances is not meant to sabotage information and communication networks, but to create open laboratories for exploring and executing alternative scenarios for more sustainable, socially inclusive, and environmental friendly futures. Some digital artists use new techno-cultural hacking strategies to go beyond the market and establish creative connections with various groups in society that are ignored or underrepresented by mainstream politics and business. By describing part of the history of the Yogyakarta Biennale, I seek to demonstrate that hacking culture is not only the result of recent technological developments, but instead I argue that it's part of a cultural evolution over an extended period of time, steered by innovative and socially engaged artists using a variety of creative strategies. In the late 1990s, the growth of Indonesian contemporary art was hampered by a lack of local gallery and auction infrastructure, the Southeast Asian financial crisis, the economic and socio-political chaos following the fall of Suharto, and the international focus on the Chinese economic and cultural boom at the expense of attention to artistic developments in Southeast Asia. Since the 2000s, the Indonesian contemporary art market has regained strength with a steady increase in art communities, spaces and galleries, representations at notable international art fairs and exhibitions, and spectacular record sales at auction houses. Art historian Benjamin Genocchio even wonders whether Jakarta has become the next art market capital. The best-selling artists include both the pioneers of Indonesian contemporary art and a rapidly expanding group of talented living artists. For instance, in April 2014, this painting, the 79 oil painting Pasukan Kita yang dipimpin oleh Pangeran Diponegoro, or Our Soldiers Led by Prince Diponegoro by Sujoyono, was sold for approximately $7.5 million at an auction at Sotheby's, Hong Kong, which is the record for Southeast Asian art. One of the commercially most successful younger artists, Nyoman Masriadi, had his 2000 triptych Men from Bantul, the final round, sold at the same auction house in 2008 for approximately $1 million, which was then an auction record for living Southeast Asian artists. So that's my economy update for today. But mirroring a type of rivalry and rebellion that is common among junior artists in response to their artistic predecessors, younger art collectors try to distinguish themselves from their seniors by focusing on digital art and art installations, two relatively underexplored areas of the art market. The group of younger collectors showed parts of their private collections in an exhibition aptly called No Painting Today. According to Wiyu Wahono, one of the initiators of the exhibition, the event was, this is a quote, a form of protest against the excessively major standing of painting among Indonesian art collectors, and how a fixation on the art form as well as sculptures has kept the true message of contemporary art from being disseminated. Since 1999, Wahono has focused specifically on collecting art installations and digital art. The work of his favorite artist, Agan Harahap, consists of digital prints which are often manipulations or simulations of historical events. For instance, this one, Sejarah number 6, consists of a photo montage of Sukarno with Marilyn Monroe, Elizabeth Taylor, and Jackie Kennedy. Although art lover and womanizer Sukarno was acquainted to each of these celebrities, he never met all three of them together. And according to Wahono, Harahap's artwork is, another quote, is touching on our collective memory and challenging our notions of reality, as well as the idea that photographs can't lie. The work shows how this perception still persists, despite advances in technology that saw the development of Photoshop and other photo editing applications. For Wahono, Harahap's work confirms that contemporary art, he says, is all about context, especially with the times, or what he calls zeitgeist. He had his professional career in Germany, which runs counter to the traditional notion of using aesthetics in art to move emotions. While younger art collectors rightly appreciate the different, more context and process-based aesthetics used in digital and other new media art, they are still, like other collectors, interested in owning it and treating these forms of art as objects. The example of the Yogyakarta-based new media art collective, the House of Natural Fiber, or HONF, illustrates that Indonesian new media art cannot be reduced to objects in conventional art categories, venues, and markets, but embodies and responds to much broader social-cultural dimensions. HONF is one of the drivers of an Indonesian post-authoritarian avant-garde of the digital age, which also includes various other art collectives, such as Ruang Rupa and Forum Lenteng in Jakarta, Ruang Mes 56 in Yogyakarta, Common Room in Bandung, Jatiwangi Art Factory in Jatiwangi, and WAFT in Surabaya. The HONF members have created their own communities who, often in interaction with local society, produce collaborative project or process-based art to be displayed in galleries as well as public outdoor spaces. One of HONF's recent projects has been Micronation, Macronation, democratizing the energy. The background to the project was the public outrage about government plans to cut fuel subsidies in March 2012. The purpose of the project was to explore alternative, cheaper and renewable energy sources which would ideally secure energy independence for Indonesia. The project included collaborations with farming communities and on-site experiments in the Merapi and Kulon Progo areas in the Yogyakarta Special Region. The project is in line with HONF's mission to bridge art, science and free technology. Apart from designing devices that can turn waste, in this case hay, into fuel, ethanol, and can be displayed as art installations in their own right, a key aspect of micronation, macronation is the use of hacking strategies for enhancing public access to restricted data. The HONF members call their self-designed satellite receivers satellite data grabbers. One of HONF's subdivisions, called VUVOC, or Velocity UFO Center, is instrumental in collecting, processing, as well as presenting the data. This dramatically enhanced presentation simultaneously promotes and conceals its much more down-to-earth, pragmatic, and socio-political purpose of hacking and sharing data that are beneficial to the agricultural practices and food and fuel needs of local farming communities. Rather than trying to get in touch with aliens, it's about protecting life on our planet. The HONF project provides a completely different picture of hacking compared to the use of cyber strategies for the violent disruption of information and communication networks. In the struggle for the independence of East Timor in the late 1990s, as Hill and Sen observed, for instance, hackers based in Portugal attacked Indonesian domains, including the Department of Security site, while Indonesian hackers took down pro-independent sites associated with East Timor's top-level domain. While these hacking strategies came close to cyber-terrorism or cyber warfare, in general, hacking activism or hacktivism may cause temporary disorder or infringe intellectual property rights or security systems, but is not meant to create permanent damage. In line with the HONF example, Denisa Kara describes how hacktivism around the turn of the century has moved from entrepreneurial individuals such as Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, technological revolutions such as the PC and the World Wide Web, and anarchism, such as cyberpunk science fiction, to the formation of alternative networks and collectives for producing and sharing knowledge. The HONF collective and activities can be seen as part of the global emergence of hackerspaces aimed at integrating what she says, community building with prototype testing, and translating between scientific knowledge produced in academic research labs and the everyday interests, practices, and problems of ordinary people. Based on case studies of hackerspaces in Indonesia, Japan, and Singapore, CARA identifies the social impact of these spaces in terms of offering innovative, hybridized, and multidirectional models for policy and decision-making different from the traditional division of powers between people doing the research and people representing the interests of citizens. The hacking of scientific information has enabled HONF to change the code of hay and turn it into ethanol. Subsequently, it has also the potential of radically altering the DNA or interrelated ways of doing agriculture, business, politics, and art. The acceptance of digitization and hacking culture as two distinctive features of Indonesian contemporary art has been demonstrated by the resilience and popularity of these new media art collectives. Some of the collectives have been able to survive for close to 2 decades now, and have also contributed to the sustainability of Indonesian digital art by inspiring a second generation of spin-off communities. 2 of HONF's own spin-off communities in Yogyakarta are XX Lab and Live Patch. XX Lab, founded in 2013, is an all-female collective, including HONF co-founder Irene Agrivina. Its concepts and projects relate to gender, hacking strategies, open source hard and software, and the reappropriation of daily practices and objects. Similar to HONF, XX Lab explores and seeks artistic and innovative solutions for previously undetected or understudied links between waste management, food and fuel shortage or unaffordability, and poverty reduction. In the project Soya Culture or Soya Couture, the art collective uses digital and biological hacking methods for designing dresses and other types of haute couture. The clothes are made from a leather biofabric, which is based on the liquid waste of tempeh and other soy industries that pollute the Indonesian rivers and soils. Other outcomes of the project are soy waste, edible cellulose, biofuel, and fertilizer. The development of businesses utilizing these techniques could potentially reduce some of the economic problems in Indonesia's low-income areas. And this project, Soya Culture, was one of the winners of a prestigious European Commission-supported competition of the annual International Ars Electronica Festival for Cyber Arts in Linz, Austria. Live Patch, founded in 2012, describes itself as a citizen initiative in art, science, and technology. In 2013, the community created its own Live Patch bioelectronics laboratory, or citizen laboratory, using do-it-yourself and do-it-with-others methods to explore and develop the potential of local technologies and human and natural resources. In close collaboration with the microbiology laboratory of the Faculty of Agriculture at Gadjah Mada University in Jogja, they developed the Jogja River Project. This project, ongoing since 2011, has assisted local citizens with investigating the water quality of the rivers in the Yogyakarta area, and it has also trained participants to document the social activities on the communities along the riverbanks. The contemporary digital art communities can be seen as a modern interpretation of the Sanggar, or the Indonesian art communities of the 1940s and 1950s, in which senior artists lived and worked together with groups of aspiring artists in a spirit of communality. Since the 1950s, social commitment in a broader sense has also been promoted by the Institute of People's Culture, or LECRA, which was affiliated to the Indonesian Communist Party and supported by Sukarno. In the mid-1970s, the new art movement, or the Gerakan Seni Rupa Baru, took a stand against the politically and academically accepted and socially distanced or universal styles during the authoritarian New Order. The current new media communities build on the new art movement's pioneering of new artistic forms in Indonesia, such as installation and performance art. At the same time, they go beyond the new art movement's discussion of social commitment in a relatively restricted, artistic, and rather distanced way, by also developing concrete art projects with and for society. The historical development of the Yogyakarta Biennale is also instructive in identifying the evolutionary rather than revolutionary and purely technological character of contemporary digital art and hacking strategies. The 2015 Biennale theme of hacking conflict is the outcome of artistic struggles and hacking-like strategies within the Jogja art world that go back to at least the early 1990s. The curator of the 2015 Jogja Biennale, FX Wotowibowo, also known as Wowok or Walk the Rock, you see him on the right with the green hair, rightly observed that in the Biennale and in Indonesia more generally, the idea of hacking goes beyond the use of technology and refers to a broader field of social practice. And this is a quote from Wowok. He said, "The term hacking is not referring to computing technology practice. It's more into social hacking. My curatorial direction is not only to use the theme as a narration, but also as a working method. That's why the exhibition is project-based. I invite participants from various backgrounds, visual art, dance, theater, journalism, design, music, to work collaboratively." The 2015 Biennale engaged with hacking practices on various levels. Firstly, it included digital artworks that use techno-cultural hacking strategies for providing alternative aesthetic and social scenarios. Secondly, by focusing on collaborative projects between artists and ordinary citizens, and between artists from different parts of the world, the event attempted to hack the conventional white cube format of international exhibitions focusing on the individual and relatively autonomous works of global superstar artists. Thirdly, it continued, if not completed, the hacking of the Yogyakarta Biennale itself, which started as early as 1992 with the Biennale counter-event. So that was very much steered by Heri Dono and his friends. Heri Dono's own work was Kuda Biennale, or Wild Horse, and the idea was to create a counter-Biennale because they didn't agree with some of the policies of the official Biennale. The history of the Yogyakarta Biennale succinctly summarizes the evolution of a broader field of Indonesian contemporary art, which provides the context of the emergence of digital art and hacking culture in the early 2000s, and which has been shaped by myriad internal and external socio-political factors itself. The development of digital technology has been influential, but does not constitute the first or final among these factors. It also took the fall of an Indonesian president, revisions in the Indonesian academic art system, reorientations in global exhibition formats, and the courageous ideas and actions of individual artists and collectives, among others. One of the recurring strategies in the art projects are hacking methods to access, share, and where necessary, modify information relating to pressing issues such as food and fuel security and environmental sustainability. This alternative type of interpersonal communication and networking has been encouraged and facilitated by the digital technologies of video camera, mobile phone, and the internet. But at the same time, it builds on other, older creative traditions and media that have used durational, interactive, and collaborative methods to express social commitment, break with artistic and socio-political conventions, and present alternative scenarios or solutions for the future. To conclude, the historical perspective reminds us that hacking culture is not merely a transient phenomenon or an ephemeral trend of contemporary digital gadgets, but rooted in an ongoing struggle by artists who attempt to have their own and their society's voices and interests heard amidst a variety of ideological, geopolitical, and commercial threats and challenges. That's all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. These are European customs, 1 minute short from the time allotted. Now we have sometimes more than 20 minutes for questions and answer. Let's go for the first round, 3 persons. Yeah, Tony, Greg, and Effie. Let's start with Tony.
Tony Reid from ANU. This is for Kathleen. Since I wondered why Communitas Bambu went suddenly quiet on me about publishing some of my books, I was disturbed by your very brief reference to them being in trouble with book burning or something after in the anti-communist hysteria. Can you tell us a little more about exactly who's being targeted in this banning or burning or destruction of books, publishers or libraries? And has anything actually happened or just threats?
Okay. Greg?
My question's for Martin. I wanted to ask a bit more about the Ustad. Do you see a different kind of Ustad rising in popularity? One who, so you mentioned that some of the Ustad had pengajian or majlis taklim, and they were being given electronic devices by their followers, presumably to help them communicate more with the Ustad. But is this influencing the nature of the kind of Ustad who becomes popular now? And I'm also wondering, when you mention, it's particularly interesting when you're saying that they have to be prepared to engage in dialogue and have pushback from their followers. Do you think that's something that's entirely new? And if it's a product of non-face-to-face communication, whether electronic communication makes it easier for someone to challenge an interpretation from the Ustad?
Okay. Effie?
Thank you. My question is also for Martin. I wonder if you could comment more on the social media use as a channel for women to talk back. And the second is, if you say that the link between consumption piety and self-discipline, I wonder if there is any like self-inflicted punishment instead of punishment from the ustad or the group owner. Thank you.
Okay. Martin, you understand? The book? Okay. Yes. Kathleen.
Hi. Basically, because in April the government did a symposium on trying to reconcile the 1965 issue, there were lots of backlash. But even before then, about the last couple of years, there have been escalating crackdowns, but we can't really know who is doing what, which because it's there is a long history in Indonesia of weird alliances, grey alliances between the military and civil groups and uncivil groups, and some military might state that they support the symposium, the reconciliation attempt, and the others won. So we don't really know who. There are of course some names like Riamisar who stated openly that they are against this 1965 issues, but at the same time, because we still have legal constraint of communism and Marxism still being legally illegal in Indonesia, so the violence has it's not. The crackdown has sort of declined now after the fasting month, but again, when you bring things into digitalization and making them visible, this is the elephant in the room. Thank you.
Okay, Martin.
I have problems with the microphone here. Thank you, Effie and Greg, for the questions. This research project is not about celebrity ustad. Yeah? It is about ustad that operate on a more local level, and especially for them, it is important that they are approachable via social media. And we know all these celebrity ustad who are, of course, now also on social media and who have tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of followers. Of course, they are not available for private exchanges via WhatsApp or etc. So that's not what we are looking at. But whether these this private exchanges is something entirely new. Yeah, maybe it's not entirely new, but I think it has significantly increased with social media and with the opportunities the social media provide for private conversations, and that is also what is demanded from by the followers of the Ustad, especially by women, and that on the one hand can enhance the authority of these more locally operating Ustad, but on the other hand, it makes them also dependent on their followers, because like this women Majlis Taklim group that I presented, it are the women who decide whom they invite to come to their Majlis Taklim for preaching there, and who also pay the Ustad. So this is a relationship that can be empowering in both ways, or the other way around. The point about self-inflicted punishment I've never really thought about that, I have to say, and because so far I have not encountered cases in Indonesia where I mean, I think that's more a kind of a Catholic idea, to punish yourself. I don't know, but the punishment, so to say, is a social one, so that you are excluded from the group for a certain time. So, thank you.
Second round. Okay, let's have one, Emma. And this one, and from this side. No, okay, then we'll have both of you. Okay, let's start with Emma.
A question to Martin. I think the overlap between digitalisation and feminisation of the public sphere is really interesting and underexplored, and I really like the way that your work is, revealing new things about that. So my question's related to that. And I'm wondering about the selfie stick, and I didn't know it was called tongsis. That's interesting. So scholarship on selfies has sort of been pushing back against, this idea that it's narcissistic and it's about women, just loving themselves and stuff. But it strikes me that in Indonesia, the discourse around selfies is a little different and a little more sort of, tongsis suggests to me that it's, reclaiming the whole idea of narciss. So I wondered if you'd reflected on that and, if you could share a bit more about discourses around selfies.
Okay. I think next him first, so that we...
My question, actually a few questions for different speakers, but then I know that the time is really limited. But since Martin Slama's research is really relevant to my research, so I'm asking to Martin about the methodology that you used, or in terms of how did you get the access to join the WhatsApp group of the current thing, because it's really not they know that you're a foreigner, they're probably like really suspicious, and how can you get their trust, or were you excluded too, or I don't know. Thank you.
Third one.
My question's for Edwin. Did you see any evidence of social media facilitating development of creative communities outside of the dominant creative artistic centres of Yogyakarta and Jakarta, or facilitating like a cross-pollination of ideas and opportunities across the archipelago?
Martin, what's that?
The tongsis and that it's called narcissistic. I think narciss in Indonesia covers the term narciss covers a semantic field that is indeed a bit different from the English narcissistic, and I think there is a lot of irony in it, and so you know, it's not an accusation. Yeah, if you're narcissist on social media, it's and people say that about themselves and they say it about others. It's not an accusation. There is an Islamic concept that experienced a kind of revival in the context of social media, and that is Riya. And that means showing off one's piety, one's religiosity. And if people want to criticize others for showing off too much in this Islamic context, they would use the term Riya and not narcissist, for example. Fatima Hussein is currently writing a paper about this revival of Riya, so I can advertise that a little bit. How to get access? Yeah. This is not my first project in Indonesia, so I did several projects before that about Indonesians of Arab descent, of Hadramis, and during the last 10 years or even more or so, I learned to know a lot of Ustad and Habib during my research. So some of them I contacted again, and they are now on social media, yeah? And they know me for quite some time. So they some of them allowed me to join the groups, and also in the course of research. I mean, would you not trust me?
Edwin?
All right, thank you. So the new media art and the communities is very much an urban phenomenon, although it's developing and also spreading. And I think that has to do with the mainstream media infrastructure as well as the academic system. So because of the history, because of the tradition of the media industry, and also of the art academies in Jogja, Bandung, and Jakarta. So ISI Yogyakarta, ITB, Bandung, and the IKJ in Jakarta, they provided the infrastructure for the development of this type of initiative. Interestingly, however, it was actually in many cases, many of these initiatives are meant as an alternative to the formal education center, as education curriculum. For instance, with the community that I talked about, the House of Natural Fiber, one of their main programs is the Education Focus Program. And for them, it was really a way of doing the things that they were not able to do within the formal education system of ISI Yogyakarta. So for them, it's a way of providing alternative media studies, alternative art education. And what we do see, however, is that with some of the members of the by now established alternative media art communities, they've also gone back to their places where they came from, so to their kampung halaman, and established new communities there. So I think one good example is the Jatiwangi Art Factory, which is not urban but semi-rural area in which they have a lot of activities, and also as we saw with the HONF project, that they also have some projects with rural communities as well, with farmers, and even in the case of Surabaya, there's now WAFT. I think they've become also quite active, and although it is obviously a major urban center in Indonesia, but it's not a center that is immediately associated with the arts. It doesn't have this well-established art academy of the same caliber as ISI or ITB or IKJ. So in that sense, we also see it spreading to other places. Interestingly, of course, also with the use of social media, what is also increasing is collaborations, international collaborations, networking, but also art projects themselves being represented in cyberspace. So that's a new dimension that goes beyond the national and the local borders.
We are doing well with time, so I think we can go for another round. Okay. Ellie, yeah. 2. No? Okay, let's start with Ellie.
Thanks. Edwin, this is a question for Edwin. I was just wondering, you mentioned the new generation of collectors who are working, collecting digital artworks, and I'm just wondering what kind of digital works they collect and how they collect them, being often ephemeral works. Thanks.
Okay. And Robin? There is a microphone behind you.
I don't really think I need the microphone. Kathleen, what's the National Library doing about the libraries in Indonesia? What is the National Library doing to improve and increase the number of libraries in Indonesia?
Okay, I'll make it the third question, if I may, for Edwin. How embedded is this kind of movement, media art movement, with the kind of cultural and political movement in Indonesia, and whether there's this kind of influencing each other or inspiring each other, and at the same time also how do they work on this kind of tensions between the capitalistic art industry as well as a community movement who wants to create some kind of either new space or to grab back the public space from the capitalist industry. Let's start with the library first.
Yeah, that's fine.
The issue with the library is basically the issue of also of infrastructure. The main issue, if you remember the statistics, is of course the very, very low number of certified librarians. It's only around 3,500 at most, whereas you have 20,000, more than 20,000 libraries. So they have been pushing for certification, but if you know the certification processes in Indonesia, then the certification processes for librarians, for example, will take you about 3 months and requiring you to attend full-time courses, and not many people can do that. So that, yeah, basically become a very complex problems where you can't have more human resources working in libraries. Of course, there's also the public perception, because for a long time, it's particularly during the New Order, libraries have been hollowed out, and it's become a place where information is very heavily controlled and corrupt politicians and military officers are put there. That stigma still remains, even though there are also more and more people working in libraries, more and more fascinating people like Ismail Fahmi working in creating good technologies to integrate the libraries. But that create also the personal dependency, whereas you need, in terms of the job itself, for that hasn't attracted many people. And of course, there's also the issue of gender balance. Lots of people who are working in technology in Indonesia and engineering are mostly male, and whereas most people working in libraries are actually female. So that created a lot of distance and gap for a very gendered space in Indonesia. I hope that helps a bit.
Yeah. Thank you, Ellie. So maybe, just also to give some background on how they actually fund their project. So in most cases, it's a mixed model. So part of it comes from international NGOs, local NGOs, such as HIFOS, for instance, who are keen on sponsoring art projects. But then they also rely on the sales of their own artwork. They often have jobs in other fields, like quite a few of the members of the House of Natural Fiber community, they have a background in interior design, so they would still continue their professional career in that field, but at the same time then invest the money in their art projects. So that's how they are able to survive, and very successfully. When it comes to collecting, I mean, probably one of the main motivations also for some of these artists to start doing digital art and to create these installations initially was actually to make a stand against some of the artworks I showed before. For instance, Nyoman Masriadi selling his paintings for millions of dollars. So by presenting it in a different way, in a way that is not that easily collected. Initially, they wanted actually to make a stand against the commercialization of the art world. But then, unavoidably, because of their success, they have attracted now also the attention of the collectors. And I think the way in which the artwork is being collected or is being sold to the collectors, probably there's 3 ways that I can think of. The first one is presenting a DVD in a very nice box, and then that's something, the box itself can also become a kind of artwork in itself. So it becomes a very exclusive collector's item. In the case of Ryu Ahono, I actually went to his gallery, which is in his office. So he's got a business office, three levels. But he also his art is also in display in his business office, and those are mainly installations. So that's a collector who actually bought the installation and reinstalled it in his own office. And some other collectors will do the same thing. They will bring it in their home and have this feature in their home, their private home. And I think, that's really, examples of people who have reached a lot of success in business. Perhaps then at some point they move into politics, but then it becomes clear that also the symbolic capital becomes very important. It's also buying oneself into, the intellectual and the artistic world by buying some unusual art objects. But a third way would be by selling the copyright, the intellectual property. So I think that's, for instance, I know of one of the Japanese museums who bought the copyright of one of the works of Krishnamurti, one of the pioneers of Indonesian new media art. So that's another way of making money. By the link with politics. Some of the artists of this generation using this kind of media, they have been criticized for not producing explicitly political manifestos. So they've been criticized by the older generation. I wouldn't, personally, I wouldn't agree with that critique, and I think the artists themselves neither. Probably they are still very much political, but it's a different type of politics. So it's not about protest marches, it's not about manifestos, it's not about making blunt statements, not about trying to improve the world. But and it's also a trend, more generally in art globally, that it's focusing on smaller issues, more concrete issues. Micro-utopias, that's a word that sometimes comes up, rather than, the futuristic big ideas. And it relates to all sorts of fields, the politics of gender, politics of the body, politics of historiography, agriculture, rural development, but very small, very focused, often collaborative projects with local communities. So it's a different type of politics. There's still a few that are more explicitly political if it comes to, for instance, Taring Padi, although their main interest is not directly into digital media. But that's an example of a group which is much more explicitly political. But in general, it's focusing on more down-to-earth issues and smaller issues. But they do come up with simulations or scenarios for still, for a better society, but not necessarily for the far future, but in the here and now.
All right, this is the end of the beautiful, wonderful day. I have a couple of housekeeping announcements before we finish. The first one is for those who have registered and paid for dinner. If you don't know the place, it will be in Golden Drum Restaurant. If you don't know the place, there will be a volunteer waiting for you at the lobby of the University House. If you know the place, you can go straight there at by 6:30. If you have not registered, you need to find a different restaurant. And second announcement, tomorrow, the second day will start at 9 o'clock sharp. Okay, let's give a round to our wonderful speakers to close the day. Thank you.